Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. My name is Kelly, and as always, my co-host is Mr. James. What's up, dude?
I'm Mr. James.
You are Mr. James.
What's up?
You know
You
what,
know how
James?
things are. I'm in the corner studio as usual. Hey, but I was going to ask you. I might want to do a remote. So I might want to move down to the front room or something one of these times.
You mean you might want to move to a bigger studio?
Well, I like the acoustics in the corner studio, but I just like to see how it is,
Maybe a different change of scenery? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, different room.
Nothing
Maybe
wrong
go
with
to a
that.
different floor.
We're high tech over here. We can definitely send the sound crew over to set you up in another room, another studio within your office. Yes, we can do that, sir.
Right on.
Absolutely. But, James, today we have a repeat guest.
Yes.
And this is even more interesting because, the name of the show is That's Some Crazy Shit. And we've said it before. We're not calling anybody that ever comes on to share their story crazy. We're just saying things are crazy. The story's crazy. The situation's crazy. Not the person, not your story. But today we have something that's not really paranormal, but equally as crazy and actually in celebration of Black History Month.
Good timing. It was good timing.
Yeah. So our guest today is Fiona Robinson Hill. And as you remember, Fiona was on last season because she actually does a ghost tour, investigation ghost tour, which you've actually been on. What's the name of it?
Grim Ghost Tours, and it goes down. It's a haunted house called Fear Factory down here. And when we grew up, it was that old creepy cement factory that now they've opened up and do ghost tours in a haunted house. It's supposed to be one of the best in the country, actually.
So that's how we actually got hooked up with Fiona doing the ghost tours. But in speaking with her, we found out that in Utah, she has been kind of recording and uncovering the history of Buffalo Soldiers, which I thought was incredibly cool. And the things that she told us about their history, the crazy shit about it, James, is that you're not taught this stuff.
Oh, no, we were never taught this stuff.
We lived in Utah, born in Utah, Buffalo Soldiers in Utah, took Utah history, never mentioned them.
Nope, never did. I didn't learn about them until I was probably, high school or older, if I can remember, right? Maybe even older than that.
And I think everybody knows the term Buffalo Soldiers because of, Bob Marley.
Sing it.
Buffalo Soldiers.
That's what she knew before we did the show, people.
Rasta. That's all I knew, but I know a lot more now. So anyway, I say we get to it. I so enjoyed speaking with Fiona. I think the shit she told us was just wow. My mind is blown. You ready?
Let's do it.
Welcome to the podcast, historian and ghost chaser, Fiona Robinson Hill. Fiona, thank you so much for being a part of That's Some Crazy Shit again. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So the first time you were here, Fiona, we talked about Fear Factory and your investigation, but we're going to switch things up now. We're going to talk about Buffalo Soldiers, right?
Yes.
And, when you talk about Buffalo Soldiers too, tell our listeners exactly, what a Buffalo Soldier is. And I'm interested in just kind of their overall history and how you even got into learning about Buffalo Soldiers, because a lot of people don't know about something that you really don't learn in school in history. So yeah, I'm so excited that you're here to talk about it.
Yeah, so Buffalo Soldiers were the all-African American regiments in the United States Army just after the Civil War. And they were segregated all the way up until A little bit into Vietnam, but not so much. So when you think about like Spanish-American War, leading into World War One, World War Two, and into Korea a little bit. So that's Buffalo Soldiers. And there's a couple of different theories floating around about why they were called Buffalo Soldiers. Physical description of looking like a buffalo, but also given the name given to them by our indigenous friends out on the plains and out here, because they fought so fiercely like a buffalo. Even until the death, they fought so fiercely. And buffaloes were, revered sacred animals to our indigenous friends, that it was kind of like a badge of honor to be called a Buffalo Soldier. And they wore it with pride. They're like, yeah, we are Buffalo Soldiers.
I know, that's a cool story.
So how did you get into even learning about them, more or less really understanding and then sharing their history with others?
So I started learning about them here in Utah specifically. I think a lot of people know about them from Bob Marley, Buffalo Soldiers. But here specifically in Utah, I was doing research on the Fort Douglas Cemetery, and someone pointed out, oh, over there are where the Buffalo Soldiers are buried. And I was like, what? What do you mean Buffalo Soldiers? We didn't have Buffalo Soldiers in Utah. No, that's not a thing. But then sure enough, after researching and doing more investigating, it's like, yeah, we actually have quite a bit of history associated with Buffalo Soldiers here in Utah that people don't know about and they don't teach about here. So then I volunteer for an organization, Sema Hadithi, that are all about preserving and teaching our African American history in Utah. And that's my group, Buffalo Soldiers.
Wow.
So, were there any women in the Buffalo Soldiers?
Besides like their wives and their children, there's one woman. Her name is Cathay, and she was like, she dressed up as a soldier to go and fight. But she wasn't here in Utah, so she was like out there soldiering and doing her thing. But unfortunately, they discovered her from like an injury. They're like, okay, you can't do that. So she didn't make it here to Utah by the time they came here with her regiment that she was supposed to be in. But her story is pretty fascinating and unique. So if anyone gets a chance to go and learn about her, it's kind of cool to learn about these, because you hear about that in the Civil War too, how women dressed up as men to go and fight. She would be one of those women who did that.
So can you tell us like the beginning, the origins of the Buffalo Soldiers, and then even how they made their way to Fort Douglas?
Yeah, so after the Civil War, because you had during the Civil War, you had like the United States colored troops who fought in the Civil War. After the Civil War, Congress passed this act that said, all right, they were excellent soldiers, let's keep them on, let's give them their own regiments, because segregation was still a thing very much then. But we need more soldiers. The Civil War kind of took out a lot of men. So they passed this act in 1866 that divided these army regiments up. And it eventually turned into the 9th and 10th Cavalry, and then the 24th and 25th Infantry. And those were your original Buffalo Soldiers out on the plains. And they were sent kind of into the west. They patrolled the west and the Oklahoma on west. Kind
That's
of
a lot
that
of area.
frontier area, yeah. And they were out here for 30 plus years. And they were the army. They were the federal presence. They came to Utah. The first Buffalo Soldiers that came to Utah were in 1886 up in the Uinta Basin, Duchesne area, Fort Duchesne. They established that military base up there. And they were there till about 1903, which people don't talk about, you don't hear about up there unless you're from that area, and then you kind of hear some rumors going around up there, like, oh, we heard about Buffalo Soldiers, maybe. But they were up there for a very long time. Sometimes they were the only ones up there. Then the 24th Regiment came here to Salt Lake City in 1896, October of 1896, so the same year we became a state. And a lot of people were not comfortable with that. They tried to stop that, but they were unsuccessful. And we had 600 soldiers come to Fort Douglas from the 24th. In fact, all of the 24th came to Salt Lake City. And
that's so crazy because they never talk about this.
Yeah,
As somebody
no clue.
somebody of color, born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, they never, ever taught us this information.
No.
That is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, there's nothing in the history books. There's no statues. There's no monuments. There's
Nothing.
nothing there.
Wow.
And they
commemorate
contributed.
that.
And they contributed. They died. They patrolled. They kept people safe.
Yeah, and they actually left Salt Lake City to go and fight in the Spanish-American War. So they fought and died for people in Salt Lake City, right? Like to keep America safe, to keep its citizens safe, to do all of that. They fought and died for Americans, for all of us here. And there's nothing to commemorate all the things that they did. Which is just astounding to me, which is why I have like this push, this drive to say, hey, these men were here doing these things. They fought and died just as any white soldier did, right?
Yeah, and let's
And
not
there's
forget
nothing
them.
here. Yeah.
Wow. And see that to me, it like falls under our umbrella of crazy shit, because it's crazy to me that you could have 600 African American soldiers in Salt Lake, but yet have no evidence,
Memorials,
memorial that they were there.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like try to just wash that part of history away, like it never happened.
Right.
Just kind of sweep it under the carpet. It's just wow.
And so they were here, 1896. They went over to Cuba, Puerto Rico, and then they fought the famous Battle of San Juan Hill, the same one Teddy Roosevelt fought.
Oh.
That he gets all the credit for, but
Yeah.
they did all the work. And then they come back, and then 100 days later, they go to the Philippines, and they finish out the Spanish-American War. So they go to battle twice. They go to the front line twice.
That's
And it's not
incredible.
talked about.
And you know what? And it's sad because they're sent to the front lines. That's how expendable they were as soldiers.
Yeah.
They're sent first
That's what I mean. They're sent
Because-
first.
because they thought they would be better acclimated because of their skin color
See.
down in that type of climate.
Wow.
Interesting. You know, it's funny you said Cuban and Puerto Rico because my family has roots in both those places, and I'm going to ask them if they've heard of Buffalo Soldiers now. See what their response is.
Yeah, if it's a part of their history, right?
Yeah, if it's a part of their
Yeah.
history.
You know, that's just, I didn't even know Buffalo Soldiers even went out of the country to fight. I didn't even know they went to the Spanish-American War. I thought so basically Buffalo Soldiers would mean that there were actually black cowboys.
Yeah, and a lot of them after, like, because they had to sign up for 3 years, 5 years, and a lot of them, this was the only way they could get work, money and stuff. So they would serve 20, 30 years, but if they didn't particularly like it, but they knew horses if they were cavalry members. So after serving a while, then they're like, I know horses, I can do this. They did turn into black cowboys, right? Out on the West, they could do that. So when you hear about how Texas and Arizona and New Mexico did have a lot of like those Western frontier black cowboys, it was stemming from Buffalo Soldiers coming out West and serving their army time and then settling afterwards, becoming settlers after that time.
Wow.
It is. I keep thinking all this history you're giving us to right now is more than Kelly and I learned, and how many elements.
That's what I'm saying. My mind is blown, because I'm like, seriously? Well, I knew there were black cowboys. I knew that, and I knew that there were Buffalo Soldiers. I just didn't know what the Buffalo Soldiers had done. Right? I didn't know that they had been around. What did you say, until the 50s? The Korean conflict.
Yeah.
And so when they disbanded, did they just go into a regular regiment? Is that kind of when the segregation of the military stopped from that standpoint, do you think?
I mean, they started integrating it more into Vietnam era, just because the numbers and everything, but you hear more, like, the regiments still existed, the 24th and 25th, but the numbers of segregation, it just wasn't big enough to keep big, huge regiments segregated. So they did start integrating it more.
Wow.
So, Fiona, is there one particular soldier that stands out in the Utah area that you think of?
There's that's a tough question. There's a few. There's so many amazing men who were a part of that, and then their wives, of course, too, because their wives had to travel back and forth in dusty desert conditions.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't easier, huh?
One man that we're looking into further, Lieutenant Colonel Alan Allensworth. He was a chaplain. He was the second black chaplain for the Army. He was here in Utah, and he did amazing things. He was able to escape enslavement, and he was in the Navy for a little bit.
That's
incredible. But was an officer a little bit. Yeah, he was able to get an education with his enslavers, like, children for a little bit. So he, even before he was able to escape, he got a little bit of education. He just did some really amazing things while he was in the service, and then even when he was outside the service, like his ministry, and he gave a bunch of lecture speeches, trying to point people in their moral compass, but also giving it kind of like a military standpoint, like, if you're not gonna be religious, try try to do good.
Yeah, just do good.
Did he stay in Utah?
He ended up going down to California. And
Did he start a town? Oh my
Yes.
God, you know why I say this? I ask you this because this is so weird to me. So just hear me out. About 3 years ago, I wrote a book, right? I wrote a book. And the book's called You Sound White. In the book, this little girl wrote about this colonel named Allen Allensworth, who founded a town in California. But the town actually, something happened to the town where it got something about the water. Didn't have enough water to sustain itself. So the town ended up drying up and going away.
Mhm.
I know this because I wanted to write about a real person that this little girl could write about for Black History Month. And so I found this colonel, but I had no idea, Fiona, that he was a Buffalo Soldier.
Yep.
Now you tell me, James, if that's not synchronicity. When she said that name, I was looking for my book to see if I had a copy of my book sitting around so I could look him up, because I'm like, God, that name sounds familiar. Is that the same guy that I looked up? And that's how I know about his town.
See, there's no coincidences, my friend.
But I had no idea about his backstory, about him being in the military, but I did know that he had founded this town in California.
Yeah. And there's actually like the way that the town, the water, it shouldn't have, there was more to do with the water than it just drying
Something
up.
happened where somebody was stopping water from reaching the town. Somebody sabotaged the town. But I couldn't get a lot of research on it because there wasn't a lot of information that I could find.
Yeah, there's a couple books.
Well, now I know. Wow, that's crazy. That's so weird to me because I didn't know all of his backstory. I thought his story would make a great movie.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I think is incredible is he serves the country that he was enslaved by.
Yeah.
And then when he goes out to try to honestly do a good thing, start a town, be productive, be a productive member of society, they sabotage him.
And then he was struck by a motorcycle on his way to give a lecture. So he stepped out of the streetcar and he's struck by a motorcycle on his way inside of a lecture hall for an all-Black congregation to give a lecture to them, a speech lecture, and he's struck by a car and he's killed.
Wow. Do you think it was an assassination?
I mean, it was heavily publicized because he was a great lecturer. He gave speeches all over the country to white people, to Black people, to religious, to non-religious. So he was heavily sought after. So it would have been publicized. But conspiracy or not, it can go back and forth. Whether
and it's crazy. Again, somebody who you're not taught about in history. The only reason why I know about this guy is because I just was looking for somebody that I had never heard of that I could put in my book that was a real person. And it's so funny because even the lady that edited my book said, I looked up your colonel to see if he was real. And he is. And I said, yeah, because I did a little bit of research. I didn't do a lot, just a little, just enough to be dangerous. So I thought it was, and I think it's interesting how you're telling me he was well publicized, sought after, great speaker, all over the country, giving speeches to people of all colors, yet we have never heard of this man.
Yeah.
Now, if that doesn't, again, apply to crazy shit to me, it's mind-blowing to me because, God, these are really important people that really made an impact on society during the time that they were here.
Yeah. Well, and God, I can't believe they are. They're just forgotten.
They're just forgotten.
Yeah.
Wow. Are there any others that you can think of? Any other ones that you can think of that stand out or have made like him?
Or perhaps one of their wives? Is there an outstanding wife you can think of?
We're doing a little bit more research on their wives, because when they went to war, their wives had to stay here and maintain the fort and the base. But there's a couple others that I just did. Charles Alexander Young, he became a general.
Oh wow,
they
general.
promoted him a general after death.
Oh.
And he was a West Point graduate, like one of the first few ones to graduate from West Point, African American descent. He was at that Fort Duchesne. Then there was a couple of band members who he did, what was it? Spanish American War, World War I, and then during World War II, he was a POW of the Japanese, and then he should have been sent back to the Americans down in the Philippines, but he was then just beheaded randomly.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a couple of these big names. There was another one who was he was like headmaster of Tuskegee in the early 1900s.
Wow.
So there's a couple big names that were here in Utah that people don't realize the significance, and don't realize that here in Utah they made big impacts after they left, because we don't talk about them here in Utah.
Right, at all.
Wow.
So when the Buffalo Soldiers were there, did the Mormon Church at all like welcome them at all, or were they really just segregated to that fort?
They, after a while, because Allensworth, he really made a difference, because he's like, look, the 24th, because he laid down the law. He's like, we have to prove that we are the best of the best, that we have this moral compass, that we are going to do good, that we're all these things. So he's like, look, my men, like, they're in the army, right? So they're a little bit rowdy, because they're men. but this is because I'm the chaplain, the regiment chaplain, and I have to keep 600 of them under control. But these are the strict orders that we have in our regiment. So he kind of wrote to them and he said, they're the best of the best, and I make sure that they are the best of the best. So after a while, people kind of saw, like, yeah, they are the best behaved. And the 16th Infantry was just before them, and the 16th Infantry got in all sorts of trouble down in Salt Lake City, like fights and drunken disorderly conduct and all sorts of things. And these guys weren't really allowed to go out and do that. Every now and again, yeah, there's a couple stories that, yeah, you can see that they got into trouble. But
boys will be boys, though.
Yeah. But for the most part, they really were a good bunch of guys, because they had something to prove, and they were going to prove it.
Is there any evidence of them at Fort Douglas? What was it, Fort Douglas they were at? Is that right?
Duchesne. Or Douglas too.
Yeah, Fort Douglas and Duchesne. So there's nothing left of Duchesne now, because it's up on the Ute Reservation. At Fort Douglas, we're trying to find little traces of evidence back and forth. That's one of my goals up there, is to be like, okay, we think this is a time period, maybe this layer of paint we think is from the time they were at the barracks here. A couple of artifacts maybe. We're going around saying if anyone has anything, that'd be great. Coin shows, antique things, maybe a water house up at Red Butte.
So, but let me ask you a question. With 600 Buffalo Soldiers in Salt Lake City, is there record of any of them staying and laying roots in Salt Lake City?
Yes. Yeah, there's a couple of them. A man named Gordon McPherson stayed, and this is the hard thing with any stories with Buffalo Soldiers is a lot of them suffered after the war what we now call PTSD, but at the time a lot of it was blamed on the color of their skin. Or like, oh, it's their personality or something like that.
Right.
And it's like, no, you send them to the front line twice, they're gonna have PTSD. That's a real thing.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
So sometimes, unless you look hard at the records, and we found a couple of them, the only time they're gonna show up in the newspapers is if they get in trouble after. It's like, I can see where that's coming from. That's PTSD. But there's a couple of them that stayed here after that was like, yeah, we like it here. Our family likes it here. We're going to stay here.
Interesting. Wow. That's just so much history and just don't know about it, which makes me wonder what else we don't know, right? Because I'm sure that they made huge impacts in all the wars that they fought.
Yeah, they were, like I said, San Juan Hill, they saved Teddy Roosevelt's butt.
And you would never know.
Yeah, I'd never heard
never know.
You
would never know those were. You would never know that those were Buffalo Soldiers. I never knew they fought in the Spanish-American War. I never knew that they went to Korea. I never knew that they were around till the Korean conflict. I just thought they were disbanded. Well, I just knew what I knew from the Bob Marley song. I'm going to be honest with you.
Now she's a historian, Fiona. Yeah.
Now I'm a whole historian, right?
Before she was singing Bob Marley before you came on.
And that's all I knew, and now I know so much more. So now I'm dangerous, James.
You are dangerous. She's like a sponge. I'm watching her just absorb.
Wow.
Yeah. That is such a wild thing that there's so much history. Now, is there any effort to get any kind of memorial to them or anything like that in Salt Lake area, up there on Fort Douglas or anything?
That would be great. It would be well into the future. Trying to, get the donations, get the funds, get the piece of land that it would take. But it would really do them justice for something like that to happen. Now at the museum, there are exhibits for them up there at the Fort Douglas Military Museum, which hopefully in the future, in the next year or two, is going to expand a little bit more. That's one of the things I'm working on up there. So right now we're starting with exhibits, and then hopefully with more donors and more funds coming in, we can get something a little bit more permanent up there or somewhere that can happen.
Wow.
They deserved it. They earned it. They worked for it.
Absolutely. Fiona, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome.
We didn't even go into the Fort Douglas haunted part,
Buffalo Soldiers haunt Fort Douglas too?
Yeah, they do.
Ooh, wait.
There.
Do tell us some haunting stories. Wait a minute, I want to hear.
So, the building that the museum is in are the old soldier barracks, the 1870s, and especially right by the Buffalo Soldier exhibits. So there's a 24th Regiment flag up there, and then we have a uniform, and then there's a saddle that we believe belonged to cavalry up there, and that is a particular hot spot of activity. So sometimes you can hear footsteps walking, sometimes you get EVPs that take place right there. The EMF detectors kind of go
and
crazy
what's an EFP for those of us who don't hunt?
Sorry, go ahead.
It stands for electronic voice phenomena.
See, I said EVP.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah, I knew what I was talking about. And then what was the other one?
So the other one is the electronic, oh, what did I say? EMF. Oh, so it's just it reads the oh dear. Okay.
Isn't it electronic magnetic field?
Yes.
Something like that.
I got all my acronyms mixed up.
We hit
And I do it
many.
professionally. Yes. So they're just little detectors that will read all of the whatever that we said. We'll read the meter. They're little meters, and they will spike. But it can make, like, electricity will make a spike, like your phones can make it spike. But we turn off the lights, and so if you lay it in the middle of the floor, the only thing that can really make it spike is if your phone's laying right next to it, or if you have one of your ghosty friends coming right up next to it, touching it, walking around it. And that happens the most right by the Buffalo Soldier exhibit, where you have those artifacts from the Buffalo Soldiers right there.
Wow. So any idea of, I know, like, sometimes when people, like, you've done ghost investigations, you might try to find out, like, who the ghost is. I guess with 600 of them, any idea of maybe, like, who of the Buffalo Soldiers is haunting? Any records of maybe anything like that?
Personally, I have no idea. I don't know if any of the customers or any of the people who have gone on have gotten any names or have come close. Sometimes they have gotten women though, so I don't know if it's been like one of the wives who lingered during all those time periods, because emotional connections can bring that about too. Like if they've been worried about their husbands or their dads, their fathers who were away, because it was their wives and their children who came too. Their families would travel with them when they were stationed from one base to the other. So it's just I call it like a little Bermuda Triangle of activity, because you have a flag, and then you have a uniform, and then you have the saddle. So it kind of just makes this little point. I always tell them it's our Buffalo Soldier Bermuda Triangle right there of activity.
We've talked about triangles, how they're tied into so much paranormal stuff, and that's funny that you say that there's a triangle, there's activity there. No coincidences, my friend.
Very cool. Ooh, well, thank you, Fiona, for coming on again and sharing with us all the stuff about the Buffalo Soldiers. I thought it's just crazy to me. My mind is just blown. I'll be thinking about this all day.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for letting me talk about it.
You're welcome.
That does fit the definition of some crazy shit, that all these people made all these contributions to our history, our state history, our country's history, and they were just forgotten.
They weren't even forgotten. They just were simply omitted. Like, y'all never existed. Because think about it. 600 Buffalo Soldiers in Salt Lake City in the 1800s, not to mention their wives and children. So probably 1,000 African Americans in Utah in the 1800s, and you are led to believe that there are no black people in Utah.
There were none.
Ever.
Serious. I mean, that's the way it was presented to us, really.
Yeah, and the ones that were there were slaves. That's what I was told. The black folks that were in Utah in the beginning of Utah's history were slaves brought by the Mormons. That's what I was taught. Untrue.
Yeah, it is untrue.
Untrue.
But, it's interesting how history gets, how can I say this? The same story can be written how many different ways, I mean, history, but the thing is, history is history. It shouldn't be rewritten 3 different ways,
Well, isn't history written by the winners?
That's what they say. History's written by the victors.
So it was mind-blowing. And, that definitely fits the definition of crazy shit, because it's crazy to me how we can have all of this fantastic history and just simply forget about it simply because of the color of your skin. I'm blown away.
Yeah, it's I don't know why.
You know why?
And I get frustrated too because, I know we have to have Black History Month, because without Black History Month, we wouldn't have heard this story. But it makes me disappointed that it should be included in all history. I hate to surprise some people out there, but yes, we are a melting pot, and yes, many different races played many different parts in making our country a success. And how many of them do we know about?
That is true. That is very true. So, thank you, Fiona, for coming on and sharing that information for us for Black history. It was very, very good timing. And let's do some random bullshit. What do you want to do? There's a lot going on. What you want to do?
Random bullshit. There's a lot going on. Hit me with something then.
Well, I say, I've got a question about clones.
All right.
Okay. So I don't really ask a lot on random bullshit. You're the one that tends to have the question, but this crossed my mind the other day about clones. Okay. Number one, do clones know that they're clones? Okay. Does a clone mean that you're cloned with all that person's memories? So as a clone, if I cloned you, it would literally be a complete copy of you, memories, everything, up until the point that I cloned you, right? And what is the clone considered to be, I guess, a living, breathing, sentient being, because it's a clone? Clone questions, James.
Okay, so now do you want like sci-fi history of clones, or do you want where we're at right now in cloning?
I just simply want you to answer my questions. That's all. Does a clone know that it's a clone?
I would say a clone does not know it's a clone. And I would say a clone does not have any memories.
So when a clone is cloned, it's just there. It has no memory of nothing. It's just, I'm here, I know nothing. I'm an adult clone person. I know nothing.
Well, yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. But then they also have, like, that's what I was asking if you wanted what I know about clones now. And then, because like in Star Wars, remember the clone army, they were teaching them. And then there's movies where their memories are imprinted in the clone. And then there's movies where the clone just has the memories. But they never seem to really know they're a clone.
Until somebody tells them of the clone, and then they kind of freak out because they're like, I'm not a clone. And I just wondered, like, if you cloned somebody, can you not clone all their memories too? And then if you don't, how do you imprint the clone with the memories?
Oh, shit. Yeah, I don't think it would have a memory because those memories have to be imprinted somehow.
So here's one. If I cloned a sheep, does it know how to be a sheep?
I would say it would know how to be a sheep. It would know how to baa and eat grass and that. But I don't think it would have the memory of, let's say its original was chased by a wolf. I don't think it would have that memory.
But would it know that what was dangerous to it and what wasn't dangerous?
I think that comes down to instinct.
So yes. Can you clone instinct?
I would say yes.
Interesting. We'll never really know because neither of us are clone scientists. These are just questions I had because I just wondered,
But hey, man, hit me with your questions and I'll hit you with some answer that kind of doesn't even go with what we're talking about, but it worked.
You know what? And if you know as a listener, like, all about clones, hit us up and let me know. You can get us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we even have a YouTube channel.
What is a clone person called? A geneticist, huh? We need a geneticist.
Is that what they're called? A geneticist?
I believe so.
I don't know.
Your cloak. Hit it up, cloak. What are
I don't know anything about cloning, but these are just questions I had about cloning. And like when they clone, what did they clone? A pig, a sheep? They said they've actually cloned a person.
Yeah,
they've even cloned a person. Could there be clones out there right now walking among us, thinking that they're people, but they're actually clones? And are clones people?
Well, it's my opinion that there are certain countries that are trying to clone people. I believe China is really pushing the boundaries of cloning.
If you clone people, are you now playing God? Are you crossing a boundary? Are you crossing a line?
I believe so. Just
Morally,
because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it.
Morally, you think you're crossing a line?
Oh, morally, I'm not sure. Morally, as so much as it's just not a smart thing to do.
I would agree. I
mean, hey, did no one watch Jurassic Park?
Well, maybe not the last one.
Yeah, well, the last one that might be the last one I watched too, man. And that little girl let go those dinosaurs, run free. I was like, oh.
And they're like, oh, she let them free. She's like, they're like me. And what were they? They were clones.
Yeah, but they were dinosaur clones.
Yeah,
dinosaur clones eat regular people.
So dinosaur clones know that they're dinosaurs, and they have instinct as dinosaurs. But the little girl didn't know she was a clone until they told her she was. Well, they told her she was a clone. Like she's like me. They're clones like me.
I still think that was the dumbest.
And they were like nothing like you because you're human and they're dinosaurs.
Right, and they're eating people.
And you're not. So nothing like you, little girl. But thanks for letting them all loose and, fucking up our world. We appreciate that shit.
They'd have like dinosaur hunting season, and they
didn't do that.
Military.
They didn't do that in the movie.
They were stupid.
They let them be in Rome because they were living creatures. You can't just go hunting shit down because you want to. Can you?
Actually, you can. I'm going to go with hunting season.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm just saying. I'm not here to review the Jurassic Park movie. Not good. But I just wanted to know about cloning.
How many naps did you hit? What on the nap scale?
You know what? Probably 1.5. It was pretty boring. It was pretty bad. It was a big build up to a giant letdown.
Yeah, no, it was. And I kind of have to say, it was to me that's kind of the way the new Avatar was.
Oh, you didn't like Avatar 2?
I thought it was pretty. I thought it was very pretty.
Very, 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 very expensive special effects.
Yes, very, and worth it. It's very visually.
Very visual.
Appealing. I think the main blue Avatar guy. I don't know his name.
His real name or his Avatar name?
Either one.
I like main blue Avatar guy. We all know who he is.
Okay, yeah, he sucks as an actor.
Oh shit!
If you can't even play a blue guy,
damn, she said he sucks.
I thought he did suck, man.
He's in all the Avatar movies.
All 2 of them?
No, they're actually in pre-production for the other ones. He's in all of them.
Oh, he's gonna probably suck in all of them.
Sam I forget his name. Sam something.
Well, Sam, no offense, but you're just not my cup of tea for a blue guy.
Damn, that's hard, James.
And I'm not a movie critic. You know that.
Well, I like how this is totally random because we went from cloning to Jurassic Park to Avatar, and I think that's random bullshit, my friend.
That's what we do.
That's what we do.
And if these people can follow along with us, hey, man, right on.
Right. So next week,
another guest.
But until then,
keep your minds open, people.